So I want to give thanks to Rachel and to Jerry Classic for some excellent support in getting ready for today's event. I also want to acknowledge some fine committee work from Jennifer Stark and Jeena Trexler. This has really been a fun group workout, and I'm going to enjoy it. So this is part of what we hope will be a year-long look at water conservation, management, and equity. It's an interesting constellation of issues. Whoopsie. Let's hit another button, see what happens. This meeting has got many parts to it and several voices. I'm going to present 3 slides on drought, and then I'm going to pass off to our guest speaker, Rebecca Kimitch, who's going to talk about adapting to our future. Jeena Trexler is going to give us a presentation on our current water policy positions at several levels of the league. And then Jennifer's going to bring up the rear with a detailed look, but a very quick one, at who are our locally elected decision makers. And as we say, about 10 minutes of the hour, we want to have time for questions and discussion. So this map actually comes from Metropolitan Water District. It gives just a bit of an understanding of the complexity of water in Southern California. It's not enough to take a look at the rain gauge, because our local groundwater, which is dependent on infusions from rain, is only 35% of our total. More than half of our water comes from imported sources from the northern part of California, the Northern Sierra, 30% through the State Water Project, and another 25% from the upper Colorado River Basin. You've probably heard this before, but it's good to get it back in your mind. From the state, we get water from the Northern Sierra along the Sacramento and Feather Rivers into the Bay Delta area. That sounds like a natural landscape, but it is anything but. It is a water hub for the state of California. And parts to the south, the Santa Barbara area, Ventura, and the entire coast of Southern California are dependent on water that comes in from the state project, 30%. The other water that we get in the South Coast is the Colorado River aqueduct water, at about, in normal years, 25% of our total. It comes from the rain that comes in Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and a tiny bit of Nevada. So drought in those places matters. And as you probably have heard, we've got a drought going in the Sacramento River Basin. We are likely not to get our normal allocation, none of it, in 2022. The Colorado River has, this is the second year of its drought in the upper basin. That drought is not going to affect California's water supply in 2022, but it affects Arizona big time, with 18% cut coming in the new year and 7% for nearby Nevada. Likewise, our local groundwater, which is highly dependent on recharge, a lot of it from stormwater, is in overdraft. Since 2000, we have used more than 1 million acre feet than we have actually put back in. So we're in a drought. We're in the second year of what's called a perfect drought, when a prolonged and concurrent drought, it occurs in all 3 of our water supply regions. That is not an uncommon pattern. The last time we had a perfect drought was 5 years ago, ending actually in 2016. It lasted 5 years, from 2012 to 2016. Perfect droughts are characterized with extreme precipitation deficits, high temperatures, reduced snowpack, and low soil moisture. So that's my wind up to Rebecca's discussion for us on adapting SoCal's water future. And Rebecca, we're delighted to have you. I'm going to turn my screen back over.
All right, thank you very much. Let me Oh, you have to stop sharing and then I can share.
Right. So let's see how fast I can figure out how to do that.
Sure. Let's see.
There you go.
Okay. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's get started. So today, thank you for that. That was a great introduction to kind of big picture where we get our water, and then a little bit about where we are right now. I'm going to share a little bit more about the agency that I work for, Metropolitan Water District, and then talk a little bit more about kind of long-term what some of our challenges are, and what kind of the decisions that lie ahead in terms of how to address some of these challenges, and how different agencies and the leaders of those agencies will guide some of that decision making. So this is Metropolitan Water District. We are the nation's largest water wholesaler, and we cover all of Southern California. We serve 26 member agencies from Ventura all the way down to San Diego. And you would be forgiven if you've never heard of Metropolitan Water District, or if you don't understand what a water wholesaler is. What that means is we deliver water to other water districts. We don't directly deliver water to the public. We deliver water to these 26 member agencies who in turn either deliver it to the public, or some of them are water wholesalers themselves. Our member agency around here is Three Valleys Municipal Water District, who is also a wholesaler, and they in turn deliver it to various agencies, including Golden State, who delivers it to you. And part of understanding the structure, you might look at that and think, why do we need so many water agencies? And certainly when you're following agencies and you're looking at elected officials, and you look at these various layers of bureaucracies, why do we need so many water agencies? It's you might be asking that, and I certainly did when I was a reporter and trying to cover some of these different agencies. The way that I have it was best explained to me, or I best come to understand it, is it's kind of like if you look at it like the transportation system. Metropolitan is like the highway and interstate system. We bring water in from the Colorado River and help bring it in from Northern California to the region. Three Valleys then once we bring it into the region, Three Valleys then takes the water and distributes it, through kind of like main arteries, your main highway, or main roads, your foothills and baselines into the region. And then Golden State takes it and delivers it to your front door. You wouldn't want the giant pipes that deliver the water to the region that Metropolitan oversees to come to your front door. And it takes a different kind of agency to manage the water as it's brought into the system than it does for an agency that delivers it to the public. So it does involve, when it comes to public voting for elected officials at these different agencies, it does involve more attention and more, it takes a lot to track what each agency is doing. But there's a reason for these various layers of agencies, and all of them are involved in how you get your water, and all of them have very important decisions to make about how you get your water. The other thing before I move on that I'll say about Metropolitan is Southern California has, and I'll get into this a little bit more later, but Southern California has weathered this drought a little bit better than some other parts of the state. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Part of the reason for that is that we pool our resources through this agency, Metropolitan, and we pooled our resources to build storage and to make investments in diverse supplies. And that ability to pool resources has really benefited the region. And it's just something to think about in terms of what happens next, and how we look ahead, and how we can continue pooling our resources for the benefit of the region, rather than Three Valleys just fighting for the supplies for this area, there's this larger agency that can look to all of Southern California and pool all of our resources to make larger investments. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So this is the slide. Jan already showed this, but the only thing I want to add here is that, she showed, her slide showed, I think 35% from groundwater. I do want to add that, not all of that groundwater that's not all recharged naturally. Only about 60% of it is recharged from natural rainfall. The rest is recharged through imported supplies or through recycled water. So recognizing that, groundwater is 30%, but groundwater, it's some of our groundwater basins are in overdraft. So the groundwater itself, a lot of folks want to turn to groundwater, but there's a lot of considerations to make when it comes to our groundwater supplies as well. But big picture, I think the big picture, that more than half of our water is imported is really important for us to look at. And then the other thing is that is our current status, or that's our current breakdown on average, how we get our water. Looking ahead and how we grapple with climate change, we really want to diversify those sources even further, and we want to rely less on groundwater. So Metropolitan and our member agencies are really making some big investments in conservation and water recycling and other local supplies to really boost the local supply piece of the pie and shrink the imported water piece of the pie. So, looking ahead, our goal is in 2035 to have significantly less than half of water coming from imported supplies. But I will add that even with the great investments that Metropolitan and other water agencies across Southern California are making in conservation and local supplies, we are still going to rely heavily on our imported water supplies for the foreseeable future. The other thing, and we'll get into this a little bit more in a few minutes, how we do this, these are the kinds of, this is their goal. This is what we have recognized through our various strategic planning, that this is where we need to be. And this is the direction we need to be heading. How we get there really, there's a lot of ways to get here, and how we do that really depends on the leaders at various water agencies. So before we get to that, part of the reason that we need to diversify those supplies is because of climate change. And Jan already talked a little bit about what we're seeing right now, and part of what we're seeing right now is already a result of climate change. California has certainly always had droughts. It's California is precipitation in California has always fluctuated. We've always had really wet years and really dry years. We see a greater fluctuation in California's rainfall than most of the country sees. Most of the country sees things, there's sometimes it's a little wet, sometimes it's a little dry. California has always had these really big swings between wet years and dry years, but that is becoming significantly worse with climate change. And climate change is already affecting both of our imported water supplies as well as our local water supplies. So on the Colorado River, what we're seeing is, increased temperatures mean less snow, and they mean more demand from trees and from plants. So you're kind of getting hit from both sides. You're getting less precipitation, and then you're getting more natural demand from the soil, from the trees, from the plants, because it's hotter. So less water is getting into the Colorado River, and therefore less water is getting to the farms and the cities that rely on that water. In Northern California, in the Sierra Nevada, climate models aren't entirely clear yet. When you get really localized with these climate models, it can get a little bit harder to predict. But hotter, drier temperatures, what they're anticipating is that there may not be less precipitation, but it is going to fall more as rain rather than snow. So and it'll fall in a few really large storms. And we're already seeing this. You know, we've seen these, I'm sure you guys have heard people talk about like the atmospheric rivers and these kind of monster storms that we're seeing in Northern California. So those are kind of what climatologists are expecting with climate change in Northern California. So again, maybe not less overall precipitation, but it's not going to fall as snow anymore. So by the end of the century, snowpack in the Northern Sierra is expected to decrease by 65%. That is a fundamental shift to how water managers in the state manage our water resources. Because right now we rely, the snow falls, it stays in the mountains until the spring and summer, when it slowly melts and it gets into our system when demands are high in the summer, as people are watering their grass and it's hotter. So there's just a much greater demand in the summer. Right now, it happens very naturally. You can just turn to that snowfall. It will melt down and come to it when we need it most. With snowpack being reduced by 65% by the end of the century, that's really fundamentally changing how we can manage the supplies, because we won't have that. Snowfall won't be our reservoir, or snowpack won't be our reservoir anymore. How do we manage with that? Do we build more reservoirs? Those are questions that decision makers are going to have to grapple with. Reservoirs are very expensive to build, but that's a question. Do we look at more at groundwater, at storing in groundwater basins? That's another option. It takes a lot longer to do that. So these are the kind of decisions that our elected officials are going to have to make, and water managers have to make in grappling with climate change. So as I mentioned, we're kind of seeing this already, and here's kind of the most stark image of this right now, stark reality of this climate change. And this is something that water managers knew was coming, but did not expect to see this year. I mean, this really kind of took everyone by surprise. So we had 72% of snowpack in the Northern Sierra. Not bad, not great, but not terrible. But we only had 38% of runoff. The hotter and drier temperatures that we're seeing meant that the snowpack that did come, and we're not even talking about dealing with less snowpack yet. This is okay, 72% snowpack. That snowpack either evaporated or soaked into the ground because it was so dry. So we only got 38% of runoff. Same in the Colorado River Basin, and this is what they really expect to see in the Colorado River. Again, 88% snowpack, 33% runoff. I mean, that it really just took water managers by surprise, because this is something they expected to see, a decade down the road, couple decades down the road, but not already. So this is part of the reason that this drought has been so significant in California in particular. So before I talk a little bit about this, I want to throw a few numbers at you to show just how bad this is. So a few records out there that we've made. So we've had the top two hottest years on record in California were in 2015 and 2021. Water year 2021 is the second driest year in California. So we're seeing, every year we're getting new records for heat, and we're getting new records for dry. But in the middle of the last drought, which was about 2012 to 2016, and this drought, we saw the wettest year in California. So 2017 was the wettest year in California's history. So again, those fluctuations that the state has always seen are just getting greater. So that big 2017 wet year, how do water managers manage that? How do you take advantage of those wet years when they come and save water for the increasingly severe dry years that we're going to have? That's again what our leaders and water managers are having to deal with. So just these really big swings. So this year, the drought response has been escalating. Governor Newsom called for voluntary conservation at a 15% level in July. In August, we declared a regional water supply alert. Again, statewide drought declaration came in October, and then last week, or I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, Metropolitan declared a drought emergency. So, we're kind of escalating this call for or awareness about how severe this drought is. The only thing I know that this is a lot about governance and how we make our decisions about water management and our future of our limited water supplies. But I do just want to throw out here that the drought is bad, and I hope everyone here takes a look at their own water use. That call for 15% water conservation, that's immediate. That's something, there's different things when we talk in the water world. We talk about water conservation. We talk about water conservation and we talk about water efficiency. And water conservation is more kind of things you can do immediately to cut your water use. Water efficiency are things that you can do to your lifestyle to reduce your long-term water use. So making conservation a way of life. They're similar and they're tied, but they're also somewhat distinct. So right now we need 15% water conservation immediately. Those are things like, going from watering 3 days a week to 2 days a week, going from watering 2 days a week to 1 day a week, taking shorter showers, looking at every single thing you do to use water and cutting it immediately. Water efficiency, those are things like, taking out your grass and putting in a drought tolerant landscape, things like that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but what we're looking for right now, what the governor is looking for right now is for everyone to reduce their water use by 15%. So just a little plug there to remind everyone that this drought is severe, and we all need to do our parts, aside from the leaders that we elect, which again I know is more what we're talking about here today. So like I mentioned earlier, Southern California has weathered this drought a little bit better than some parts of the state, and part of that, there's a couple different reasons for that. One are the diverse supplies that Jan talked about. We're lucky in Southern California, in parts, not everywhere in Southern California, but in most of Southern California, we're lucky that we have local resources, state water project supplies, and Colorado River supplies. So those diverse supplies allow us to be able to turn in different directions depending on the status of different resources. The other big thing is we've made a lot of investments in storage. Metropolitan, again, through our pooled resources basically the region's ratepayers, has made big investments, including the construction of Diamond Valley Lake, which is Southern California's biggest reservoir. We built that in the 90s, and it's really helped. We also have storage in Lake Mead. So going into this drought in 2020, we actually had a record amount of water in storage, and that's really helped the region manage through this drought. And it really just kind of shows the value of storage. That 2017 wet year, we were able to capture a lot of that water. You can see the difference between 2015, 2016, and then 2017, that wet year, we captured just a lot of water. We were able to put a lot of water into storage. The other thing that has really helped us put water into storage is this. Per capita water use has really lowered across Southern California. So in the 1980s, we had folks on average were using about 200 gallons. Each individual on average used about 200 gallons of water per person a day. That's indoor and outdoor. And you think about that. People sometimes are surprised by how much water one individual uses a day. So back in the 90s, or back in the 80s and 90s, it was about 200. We're down to 127 now. Significant drop, but there's certainly room for improvement. And if you looked at that number in other other parts of the world, you would certainly see a different number. Again, this is indoor and out. But like I said, when we talk about changes that we want to see, reducing this number, there's long-term things that you can do to reduce this number. One of those big things that we support at Metropolitan is replacing grass, which is really water intensive, with California friendly or California native landscaping. And, you know, you see that a lot around Claremont. A lot of folks did this during the last drought, and you can see it's, you know, there was a long time this kind of misperception that that it was, you know, ugly, and you would kind of lead to this like very, you know, desert arid landscaping, but really it can be beautiful, attracts butterflies, attracts hummingbirds. There's a very nice way of doing it. It is not cheap, even with our rebate. You know, we certainly acknowledge that, which is one reason we don't necessarily expect people to do this right away when we talk about 15% water conservation, when we talk about the drought. There's other things that we ask folks to do, but and then other longer term things people can do is we have rebates for water efficient washers and toilets and sprinkler nozzles and all these other rebates we have. So those are kind of longer term ways folks can save water. So and this is my last slide, so I'll wrap up here. But so when it comes to managing through these, you know, how we move forward to address this climate change future that we have, conservation is going to be critical, and how we invest in that conservation through those rebate programs, how we encourage, incentivize folks to use less water. There's rebate programs. There's also, you know, there's considerations in some agencies in Southern California and outside of Southern California of you know, using more sticks rather than carrots. Las Vegas recently implemented a ban, an all-out ban on ornamental grass, period. No more ornamental grass, right? So there are some folks who are talking about doing that in Southern California. Again, those are decisions that will be made by our leaders. And again, there's also incentivizing it. So there's other folks who lean more in on you know, funding more conservation rebates like that, you know, establishing programs to help teach, you know, help people make those changes, because they're not easy to make, but those take money. So, you know, where you find the balance and what direction you go depends on, those are all decisions to be made. The other thing is, you know, for Metropolitan, like I said, we still will be relying on our imported supplies for the foreseeable future. So when we talk about maintaining those imported supplies, those also involve investments. And Metropolitan supports the single tunnel Delta conveyance project, which is, you know, it's a politically touchy one. Metropolitan supports it because, quite frankly, the Bay Delta is not working for anyone right now. The system there, it's broken, and this is the solution that we believe is the best one to preserve the ecology of the Delta and to continue delivering the imported water supplies that Southern California and that the state needs. Again, that is an investment that is ultimately going to come from ratepayers. So those are important decisions to be made by our leaders. There's also big investments that are being made in local resources, very big investments. Metropolitan is considering building one of the largest water recycling plants in the region here in Southern California. It would produce 150 million gallons per day, enough to serve 500,000 homes. We've got a demonstration plant. The full facility has yet to come before a board. We're in the environmental planning process right now. Full decision has yet to come before a board, but is expected to come, I believe, in 2024. I think that decision will come before our board. Again, $3.4 billion project, big investment, really big investment, but drought proof, climate change proof supply for the region. So I'll leave it at that, because I know we're getting a little bit tight on time, but you know, like I said, this is just to sum up. We know that we are going to have to make some big investments. We're going to have to make some big changes to deal with this climate change future, and how we go about doing that. There's some different directions that we can go. And it's quite frankly, it's all going to cost. These are costly investments. How we spend our resources we've got limited resources to spend from ratepayers. So what directions we go and how we spend those resources is really going to be the decisions that come down to our elected officials. So I'll leave it there.
Gosh, Rebecca, that was a terrific tour in a very short amount of time, and just super slides. And so I'll wait while you pass off here. Okay, let's try this again. If you've got a question for Rebecca, would you put it in the chat so that Rachel can pick up on it? And so, Jeena, it's your turn.
Hi, thank you so much, Jan. Thank you, Rebecca. That was great. So I'm just going to do a brief overview on the League's water policy positions at a few different levels. So I want to start by just reviewing what a position is and what that means. So as a reminder for those who are unfamiliar, before the League takes action on any issue, they adopt and act on positions, and it's a 5-step process. They observe a problem, study and discuss all sides of the issue, reach member consensus on what needs to be done, and then the board will officially adopt a position. After that, the board can take action. That might include public information meetings, letter writing campaigns, phone calls, meetings with those decision makers. And if all else fails, they can now use that position to litigate when citizens' rights have been severely harmed, which you may see in some of our emails, state emails, national emails about some of the litigation that the League has taken up on many issues, including water conservation and even voter access. So if a position is adopted, firm action can then be taken on the issue that's addressed by the position. And so next, we're going to take a look at some of the League's positions, starting at the local level and expanding out from there. So our League, the League of Women Voters in Mount Baldy area, our current water position reads as such: support for policies, decisions, and practices that recognize clean and adequate water as essential to human life, support for public ownership of water rights and utilities as vital public resources to ensure public goals and purposes are reflected in policies and rates, including the prevention of any future acquisition of water resources by any non-public entity, international cartel, or private interest or operation. So that's where we are locally. Moving on to our state League positions, I'm going to do a brief overview and give some examples of ways that the League supports measures in all of these different areas that you see listed here. The state League positions on water were just recently readopted at the last state convention. So beginning with the planning and management of water resources, that means that the State League would support measures that protect the natural environments in areas of water origin and use and preserve wild and scenic rivers, among other things. When it comes to the position on water quality control, that could mean giving state and regional boards responsibility for setting water quality that may be higher than even minimum federal standards. When it comes to surface and groundwater supplies, the state should have a statewide program for groundwater management and set and enforce standards for groundwater management. When it comes to the fiscal objectives for the State League positions, it means that the League would support measures that require wildlife enhancement, flood control, recreation costs, and protect low or fixed income water users by lifeline rates. In the area of conservation, that means the League would support measures that encourage conservation by all categories of water users and encourage the use of reclaimed water for power plant cooling, groundwater recharge, agricultural and landscape irrigation. And specifically in the area of the Sacramento, San Joaquin Delta, and San Francisco Bay estuary ecosystems, the League would support measures that increase water conservation and promote wastewater reclamation to minimize reliance on water exported through and around the Delta. So state leagues are able to take up these regionally specific statewide studies in order to take positions on issues that are pressing in their state. And clearly in California, water is a significant issue here in the state of California. And then finally, I want to wrap up on the National League's position on climate change and natural resources. The League's position is that climate change is by far the greatest challenge to the balance of our ecosystem. And so those positions are going to include preserving physical, chemical, and biological integrity of ecosystems with maximum protection of public health and the environment. Support climate goals and policies that are consistent with the best available climate science and that will ensure a stable climate system for future generations. and to promote public understanding and participation in decision-making as essential elements of responsible and responsive management of our natural resources. So the League nationally has specifically taken positions on air quality, energy, land use, and climate change. And on that final point, to promote public understanding and participation in decision-making, this unit meeting is part of an effort to encourage our League in the direction of understanding participation as a part of our advocacy and education. And so thank you so much for letting me share about our League's positions.
Okay, thanks, Jeena. That was rapid. And I hope my memory will bring it all back, because that was important information about where the League has been in the past, at some points, distant past. Jennifer.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you so much, Jeena, and thank you, Rebecca. So as Rebecca let us know, is the slide going to come up? Sorry. Oh, there we go. Thanks. These are the elected water officials who serve on the boards of agencies that manage the groundwater and provide retail or wholesale water to the cities that make up the League of the Baldy area. Many cities are served by more than one of these agencies. And to just restate what's been stated a lot, we do vote for these people. So here we go. Starting with the Chino Basin Conservation District, who the Chino Basin Water Conservation District is a groundwater management. They get their groundwater from Chino Basin, Cucamonga, Rialto, Lytle Creek, Colton, Six Basins, and then imported water from Metropolitan Water and also Inland Empire Utility Agency. And then we have these elected officials. I'm just going to tell you that, so if you're from Montclair, your official is Terrence King. If you're from Rancho Cucamonga, it's Mark Gruposo. Sorry, I should have practiced saying the names. And then their term limits are right there too, but in case you can't see them, Terrence King is up for re-election in 22. Gruposo is in 2024. If you live in Ontario, Margaret Hamilton, that's District 3, she's up in 2022. Mark Littenberg is District 4, also Ontario, 2024. Gil Aldaco is District 5, that's Montclair, 2024. Dr. Hanif Gul Mahmed is District 6, Ontario, that's 2024. And Ryan Sonnenberg from District 7, that's Chino, in 2022. The Inland Empire Utility Agency is a water wholesaler, and they're serving approximately 875,000 people in a service area of 242 square miles. So rather than spending so much time reading these out, the service area for Inland Empire Utility Agency that touches on the stakeholders in Mount Baldy League is Upland, Montclair, San Antonio Heights, Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga, also Chino and Chino Hills. The term limits are either up in 2024 or 2022. Monte Vista Conservation Water District, that's primarily Montclair. That's a retail and wholesale water distributor to a population of about 141,000 people in a 30 square mile service area. Monte Vista is not only, is Montclair also Upland and Alta Loma. Cucamonga Valley Water District retail water provider that is about 47 square miles of a service area. And the service area for Cucamonga Water Valley District is Cucamonga, Chino Hills, among others that Three Valleys Metropolitan Water District is a wholesale water to 13 member agencies in a service area of 133 square miles. And that's serving South Pomona, Covina, Walnut, Claremont, Laverne, San Dimas, Glendora, Walnut, and Diamond Bar, and their terms are also 22 to 24 staggered. The Walnut Valley Water District retail water supplier, that is, Walnut Valley Water District, that's also a retail water supplier, and that is serving North, South Diamond Bar, Walnut, West Covina, Pomona, and others that aren't a part of the Valley Area League. And then Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District is a wholesale water provider. And in terms of the league, they're serving Glendora. So to go through all of that is really just to let us know that within the league of Mount Baldy area, we have all of these different agencies that are either managing the groundwater or getting the groundwater that's going to your that's coming to your pipes via a wholesaler or retailer. So just also a note, Glendora, Ontario, Upland, Chino, Laverne, Chino Hills, and Pomona all have their own water department. And the elected officials for that are their city councils. So here on this next slide, we have number one, that's the groundwater managers. So groundwater managers ensure that the water being pumped for the public or privately owned water suppliers are following previously established adjudications, and they establish the annual operating safe yield, which is how much can get pumped or how much needs to also then be re-enhanced by imported water. This is established based on pumping needs, expected recharge, and groundwater levels. These agencies are sometimes also special districts and are staffed by hydro engineers, and their work is highly technical. So we have Chino Basin's Water Conservation District here, Upper San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, again for us that's just Glendora, and Six Basins Water Master, which is Claremont, Laverne, Pomona, Upland, Pomona College, and I'm sorry, I need my glasses to read the best, but you guys can see it, right? So all of these folks here with the Six Basins Water Master. So then with this green tree for number two, the surface water wholesalers, these are the wholesalers and distributors of water, both groundwater and imported water, and they ensure that the water retail, that the water retailers or the public utilities get the water that they need. And like, as Rebecca said, these are not the pipes that come from, those pipes are huge. So it's also the infrastructure gets smaller as it comes to your house. So for our surface water wholesalers, we have Metropolitan Water District, Inland Empire Utility Agency, and then also Three Valleys, which is both a wholesaler, and they also enhance the water. They also get water from imported water. And then you have your water retailers, and these are probably the most familiar to you because these are the ones that send you a bill. So you have Golden State Water Company, which is that is if you live in Claremont. Monte Vista Water District, that's, again, we went through the cities, Cucamonga Valley Water District, Walnut Valley Water District, and then cities that have their own utility. So this is all to say that the water issues are complicated and intricate, but this should be seen as an invitation, not an obstacle. Every day when we turn on the tap, run a shower, turn on the hose, that water that is coming out almost effortlessly has taken a journey that is shaped by invention, engineering, politics, development, the climate, investments, and the decisions of the people we elect. So just to kind of like, as a summing up, that this doesn't have to be like a drinking from the fire hydrant. It really can be a first sip for us to learn together. So I think sometimes when things are complicated, the response is to become overwhelmed. And I would just really like to ask everybody to try to resist that and instead think of it as something is not impossible to know. It's just think of it like layer by layer by layer. And for what we really want you to know today is that we do have impact in that we vote for the people who are making decisions on these investments. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much to all of our presenters. I am just overwhelmed with all of the information. And before we start into our Q&A, I know we have some great questions already in the chat. I'm going to take a point of privilege and make 2 quick comments. And the first is that to Ms. Trexler-Sousa's, all of her great information about the league's positions, I would like to just give a little bit of information that the league has been making we are taking some really broad liberties with our application of our positions these days. So at all of the levels, both local, state, and national, in following the work of other local leagues and other state leagues and national, the positions that we have at all of these levels can be used very broadly and very generally. So as we look to the positions that we hold, you can use them to really advocate for the things that we want to advocate for, and especially with many of these positions that were written so long ago and need to do work on that is really necessary right now, and we maybe don't have 3 years to do another study. You can apply them quite broadly and get the work done that we need to do right now to do the advocacy that's important in this moment. And then the next just tiny little note I had on Ms. Kimitch's comment about the expense of re-landscaping to get rid of turf. It is quite expensive to redo an entire lawn, but it's not expensive to do little bits at a time. So I've spent lots of years doing just carving out little bits and little bits and little bits, because you can always just start by digging away. So, California natives grow really well off of clippings, and you can always just turn off one sprinkler or break one sprinkler, which is basically what's happened where we live. And then just put in go and grab some rocks up from somewhere up where you can find rocks and put in something, a clipping or a succulent, and you can always just start digging out and chipping away at your lawn almost totally for free. So if you want to do something beautiful for your whole yard, then yes, that's expensive. But if you want to just start chipping away a little at a time, you can totally do that for free by just breaking one sprinkler. With that, I would really like to move into a Q&A, and I will start with some of the questions we have in the chat. And we have a question from Mr. Boynton. How earthquake resistant is our water supply and distribution system? I think this might be a question that Ms. Kimitch maybe has an answer for.
Yeah, I can feel that one. And before I do, I want to absolutely echo what Rachel said. Absolutely, you can, and we do encourage that. Thank you for pointing that out. We do encourage that. You can start with a little parking area, and see what grows there and see what you like, and take it little by little. You don't have to do your whole yard all at once. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you pointing that out. Thank you, because there's certainly many opportunities there. So thank you. The other thing I want to apologize for is I was very Claremont centric in my comments, and I apologize for that. I should recognize this was recycling an old presentation, and I should recognize that that your organization covers far more than Claremont. So I apologize for that. So as far as earthquake resilience, I mean, all of our imported water crosses, very, very significant, what are they called? Earthquake faults, fault lines. Sorry, I'm like, what are they called? Fault lines. So, a serious earthquake could conceivably cut off some of our imported water supplies. That said, we at Metropolitan and our member agencies across Southern California, we have emergency supplies on this side of those fault lines within the region. We have about a 6-month supply of emergency reserves in the event of an earthquake. We also have a myriad partnerships across the state. Should there be an earthquake that cuts off supplies, to immediately take action to restore those supplies as quickly as possible. We have a lot of materials on hand to make repairs as quickly as possible to any pipelines. We have at Metropolitan, we have a full shop and staff that can build and construct the parts necessary, so you don't have to rely on those to be brought into the region. So seismic resilience is something that our folks think about all the time. And quite honestly, that is one of the reasons for Metropolitan support of the tunnel in the Bay Delta, is the concerns of an earthquake and what that would do to those water supplies should it's, that system, we don't need to get into the details of it, but that system is based on levees that are very susceptible to destruction in the event of an earthquake in that region. So anyway, yeah.
Thank you so much. I didn't say this, if typing into the chat is something that is challenging to you, please feel free to use the raise hand function in the reactions, and you can ask your question live. That's fine as well. I'm happy to call on you. I know I have a tough time writing questions into a chat. So you can ask your question as well. The next one is also for Ms. Kimitch, but I think that possibly Mayor Stark might also have some insight on this. But the question is, what is the status of the Cadiz Water Project and MWD? So we'll go first to Ms. Kimitch, and then if Mayor Stark has anything to add, we can go there.
So before I do, I like to refer back again on the last question on seismic resilience. That's the Diamond Valley Lake that I mentioned before, that we all invested in and we're all paying for as consumers in Southern California. That is within the region. So when you hear people talk about that large reservoir, Diamond Valley Lake, those are resources that we could turn to in the event of an earthquake as well. So just want to make a little plug for those stored resources and the value of the investment that we're all making. So as far as Cadiz goes, it's not something, quite honestly, it's years away before coming to Metropolitan Board. There's all, I'm definitely not an expert in Cadiz. I do know that there's a lot of environmental work that would need to be done before it can even come before Metropolitan's board. And I believe there was a board decision. I've been at Metropolitan for 5 years, and I think it predates my time there. I think the most recent board decision was not in support of it. But again, it's not something that would come before our board for some time. But if they do all of the necessary environmental work, that is a decision that would come before our elected officials.
So just to add and piggyback onto what Rebecca was just saying, this is the Cadiz project is still ongoing, and however, Three Valleys is supporting and funding a study that is still hasn't been that's still also in the balance, that would help to bolster the hypotheses that there's nothing wrong with taking this water. And so if that is part of the reason why Three Valleys is doing this study, is to get Met on board. So this is something important to advocate. If you don't think that this ancient aquifer should be used and pumped, then this is something that you need to speak out about. And people have been coming to Three Valleys meetings and speaking out about it, but look and see what district you live in. If you live in Claremont, get in touch with Brian Bocock. If you live in Southern Claremont, your rep is Danielle Soto. If you're in Upland, it's either Danielle Soto or Carlos. So just look at our list and find where you fall and get in touch with your rep if you want them to hear what you think about that.
Next, we have a question. Any chance to stop rainwater runoff to ocean and encourage local area recharge on a neighborhood level?
So this is, Rebecca, I think this is a MS4 question that I could try my best to address. The state is now mandating that cities in California do keep their runoff from going into the ocean and come up with a whole bunch of different ways of turning that into recharge. The infrastructure to be compliant with this very aspirational law is billions and billions of dollars that cities don't have. So it is sort of this is part of the imperfect work that happens. What the state wants achieved is very necessary. How cities are then going to have the money to do it is a whole nother story. So yes, that this is all in the works. Has it been figured out how to pay for it yet? No. And so Karen, was part of your question, would then that be water that the city would use? Let me look, sorry. Would you read the question again, Rachel?
Well, perhaps Karen can.
Well, I heard a lecture of maybe a week or so ago from the Prado Basin people who are building a huge infrastructure system down there that goes into part of Orange County, and they are bound and determined to stop every drop of water from ever going through Orange County and reaching the Pacific Ocean by doing recharge. And of course, they've got more open land. But I was even thinking, and I'm aware of MS4, the state mandate, and how much it costs, but I'm just thinking,
yeah.
I'm thinking I'm thinking of local. I mean, we've all got gutters and drains. Why don't we get down there and break up the drains and let the water just soak into our local neighborhood groundwater?
Yeah, that is one reason why you want to make sure you have some permeable landscape. You do want to make sure you have permeable landscape. In terms of like a city being able to, so like all of our spreading grounds in Claremont, all of that water is adjudicated.
Yeah. Well, and our big spreading grounds are north.
We get some of this, like this is sort of how this conveyance is. Even where it originates isn't where it stays.
No.
We have to share with each other.
No.
But it is. I think that this is an area that, as we become more sustainable, I think to just kind of hit on the next question about the infrastructure bill. Now that bill's new, and so how it's going to be spent, we don't know yet. But yes, there is a tremendous amount of potential to invest in our infrastructure and in our sustainability. But these financial decisions, these investments are made by people who we elect. So it's very much, anytime something like this happens, like this huge infrastructure bill, it's just I hope this will be another really motivating thing to help us really think about who we want to make decisions on our behalf.
I just have one more comment, and that is local building regulations could mandate French drains rather than solid drains going out to the street. French drains have holes in them, so as the water comes off the roof, it gets leaked into your local yard. And the other thing is a cistern.
Yes.
or on every property where
then
the
just
drains
not
empty into
forget-
the cistern.
Yeah, and then just not to forget the mosquito vector district,
Of
because
course.
that's also one thing that, like, if you're going to do these things yourself, it is really important to remember that you don't want to unintentionally create a vector.
Right. Thank you.
Can I just chime in with a couple of thoughts here?
Yes,
One, we have rebates for cisterns, so and Three Valleys from time to time, and I'm sure IEUA as well from time to time will have different programs for rain barrels and for cisterns for folks who want to put that on their property. As far as stormwater capture and recharge, there's a lot there in terms of multi-benefit, in terms of water supply, as well as obviously the contamination issue and eliminating or addressing the permitting issue that Jennifer brought up. Part of the challenge is these are really expensive projects. Metropolitan does have a pilot program to explore the water supply benefits of these projects. So we can, if you know a project, you can apply for this funding. So there's county funding, there's state funding, and there's metropolitan funding, and you've got to kind of play with the different benefits and who's looking for what benefit. Some folks looking for the pollution, metropolitan looking for the water supply. That said, they're expensive. They are expensive, and so figuring out where to put resources from a water supply perspective. The reality is, and I wish I had I was looking for the numbers and I don't have them in front of me. The reality is we do a pretty darn good job in Southern California right now of capturing our stormwater. And I know that might be, I know sometimes that can be hard to believe when you see, a bunch of water running down the LA River, but we actually do a pretty decent job. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I can't say anything beyond pretty decent, but the opportunity there is maybe not as big as some would think or hope or expect. The fact is we just don't get that much here, stormwater, rainwater here. So there is certainly, it's not to say there isn't opportunities, but again, looking where to spend resources, we're looking at it. That's the point of Metropolitan's pilot program, is to look at the water supply benefits of some of these costly programs. But again, they do have multi-benefits. So when you look about, when folks look at where to invest our resources, because there are those great multiple benefits, maybe that is worth the investment. Again, those are decisions for Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I just want to I think Mayor Stark did kind of go into that next question, which was what the impact of the recently passed federal infrastructure bill has on Southern California future water planning. And I think what your answer kind of alluded to was that there will be an impact, but maybe we don't know what that is just yet. Am I correct that was kind of where you were going?
That is absolutely correct. It takes a little bit more time to, this is going to take some time, but yes, there will be money, water. Our utilities are one of the earmarked pieces of the infrastructure bill. So yeah, you can expect that there will be investments in California in our utilities, energy, water, both gas and electric. We'll see a lot of stuff happening.
Thank you so much. I'm going to move over to Ms. Bush, who's had her hand up. So let's.
Hey, thank you. This is just a follow-on to the question about the Cadiz project. I want to point out that Jeena informed us that we have a current local position that includes the prevention of future acquisition of water resources by a non-public entity. I believe that might apply to the Cadiz project, and that our board could be encouraged to take a position on this project.
If I may, I do think that in the past, I know I have done quite a bit of work before I was on the board, bringing motions to the board on certain issues. So you don't necessarily have to be a board member to bring something to the board that you find. So if anybody in this group or you yourself, Ms. Bush, were to develop a motion, something that you wanted, we then could go to it. We could then take action. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that we do that. It might actually happen faster if other league members decided that that was something they wanted to do some of the legwork on, and then we, the board, could take action. Just throwing that out there. Where was I going to go next? I really appreciated what Ms. Rosenthal had to say about the project that was being planned, about where they were putting their emphasis on making sure that in the design that it was being designed to just capture all that water and doing that. And I think we are seeing some of that. Kind of sounded like, I don't know what the project was, if it was like a public or a private, but I think we are seeing a lot more of that yes, cities are being required to do things under MS4, but I think a lot of other things are just planning ahead, whether it's housing or other types of development. So I would like to make a plug that water and housing cannot be severed, that housing and homelessness is also an issue that we have for advocacy and education. And this year, our housing and homelessness has a special emphasis on environmental and sustainability. And I think that when you look at what is happening with housing in California, there's kind of there's a public perception that people are moving out of the state because of housing prices. But when you look at actual trends, what is happening is that people are leaving expensive coastal areas and they are moving inland, which is a problem for water, because they are moving out of places where there is more water to places where there is less water. And so if you build denser infill, it is better for water than if you move into drier desert areas where you're more likely to build less dense developments in drier areas. So I just feel like this is a way to show that everything is fully connected, and like housing and water are connected. Some people are leaving the state, but a lot more people are leaving certain parts of the state. And we can't just say that we have this thing we're working on, we have this thing we're working on. No, we have these things we're working on.
Can I just chime in really quick? And as far as those, you're absolutely right that there's a lot that can be done from a policy perspective, like Ms. Rosenthal was saying, in terms of requiring certain things for stormwater capture. A lot of those water efficiency gains that I pointed out, many of them have been made through new requirements for more efficiency, greater efficiency in homes and in appliances. You kind of start with the innovative that needs to be funded through rebates and things like that, through financial incentives, and then as they become more common, then you can just start mandating them. So there's kind of a trajectory that that these systems go through, where they become, and then they just become the standard. So you're absolutely right, policymakers. It's about investments, but it's also about various requirements that you put on new homes, whether you do allow ornamental turf or not, things like that. The only other thing that I wanted to chime in on really quick is that the infrastructure bill, there is some specific funding for water recycling. Metropolitan has its big program. San Diego is building a really large plant as well, and the city of LA is building a very large facility as well. So there's 3 huge new water recycling projects on the horizon, like we've never seen before, and all of those could benefit from about $500 million in funding that's in the infrastructure bill. Those are kind of the 3 big projects that can't even apply for them. So they're bound to get some significant federal funding, which is fantastic. We're just thrilled about it. And there's also about $500 million in the infrastructure bill for smaller recycling projects. So there's a lot of money in that infrastructure bill for water recycling, which is really it's fantastic. I mean, that's a really important resource when we look at our future supplies. Water recycling is making sure that we're using our resources more than once before it, because otherwise that water just it's sewage water that ends up out getting treated and then flushed out into the ocean and quite honestly wasted. So we're all really excited about the funding and the infrastructure bill for recycling.
Thank you. Ms. Rosenthal, please.
Although I have to alert you, I don't know how many people have seen this article in both the LA Times and the Daily Bulletin, and I think the New York Times mentioned it this morning. The Department of Labor has suggested that the California's portion of the infrastructure bill be withheld because of something that happened in 2008 having to do with labor unions and determination of new structures for pensions and benefits and everything. So apparently California's portion is not coming straight to California. There's been a holdup. And that means for transportation, Gold Line, i.e. water, utilities, and all of that. So cross our fingers.
All right, such good news.
Washington.
Well, thank you all for staying well past our 3 o'clock time, but I think that was some excellent conversation. I would like to thank our presenters today, and especially Jan Bush and Jeena Trexler-Sousa for the work that they did in organizing this. I'd like to thank Mayor Stark and Rebecca Kimitch for devoting their time to this, and all of you for attending. I hope to see you at our holiday party in 2 weeks and at all of our future events. Thank you all so much.